أهلا وسهلا بالجميع. نرحب فيكم أصحاب دولة الرئيس وأصحاب المعالي والجميع. اليوم بنرحب بضيف أولا عزيز علي أنا شخصيا، لأنه بعرفه بالتسعينات وبدأنا يعني في مشاريع بحماية الطبيعة من التسعينات، وبتشكركم على الحضور. مؤسسة شومان بدأت بالبرنامج السنوي البيئي، وكانت الفكرة إنه في البداية يكون في لقاء عن البيئة الأردنية، بعدين ننتقل إلى البيئة العربية. معنا الأستاذ مهم بيحكي في البيئة العربية، والوحيد اللي بيحكي في البيئة العربية، الأستاذ نجيب صعب. رح نتشرف بحضوره إن شاء الله الشهر القادم، أو يتكلم عن البيئة العربية. هي المنظمة المنتدى العربي للبيئة والتنمية، وهو أول ما بدأ مجلة البيئة والتنمية، وكانوا يحكوا عن البيئة العربية لما ما كان حدا يحكي عن البيئة العربية، فبنرحب فيه أيضا. وننتقل في المحاضرات إلى البيئة العالمية، وإحنا يعني سعيدين اليوم يكون مستر ماركو لامبرتيني ضيفنا وصديق عزيز. أنا بعرف ماركو من التسعينات، لما كانت الجمعية الملكية لحماية الطبيعة صارت عضو في بيرد لايف انترناشونال، وهو كان مسؤول على النتورك في ذلك الوقت عن المتابعة مع أعضاء هذه المؤسسة اللي موجودة في 120 دولة. هي جمعية غير حكومية موجودة في كامبريدج. فاشتغلنا، يعني تشرفت انه اشتغلنا مع بعض شوي، وهو من يعني بيشتغل بحماية الطبيعة من 35 سنة. كان هو صغير حكى لنا قصة انه كان يعمل في براري تسكني، وكان او بايطاليا، وكان يشتغل كمتطوع للWWF اللي هي لجلب التمويل لحماية الأنواع البرية الموجودة، خاصة الذئاب وأنواع أخرى في منطقة تسكني أو منطقة إيطاليا. بعدين تشرفت أيضا أنه اشتغلت معه لما صار هو مدير البيرد لايف انترناشونال، وغير النظرة لبيرد لايف انترناشونال الحقيقة، وعمل مشاريع لها علاقة بحماية الغابات وشراء الغابات وحماية الموائل لحماية الطيور، واستخدام الطيور ك يعني indicators أو مؤشرات لصحة الموائل. وهو اللي الحقيقة اللي دعاني أكون رئيس للبيرد لايف انترناشونال، ولكن بعد 3 أشهر هرب مني. بعد ما صرت رئيس أنا هو راح على مدير WWF، وهي من أكبر المنظمات في العالم، موازنتها حوالي $1,000,000 أو اليورو، 900 مليون أظن. هو راح يحكي عنها أكتر، ولكن موجودة في 100 دولة، وفيها أكثر من 5 مليون عضو في العالم. وهي من المؤسسات، احنا لما ربينا على حماية الطبيعة ربينا على شعار الباندا والWWF. هاي اللي شعارها الباندا، ومديرها اليوم ماركو. يعني أنا بتشرف أنه أقدمه كأولا صديق، وثانيا من قياديي حماية الطبيعة في العالم، وبقود أكبر مؤسسات حماية الطبيعة في العالم. Marco, it's my pleasure to introduce you, my friend. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be in Jordan. I actually was visiting Jordan quite a lot when Khaled was my chairman in BirdLife. We had the regional office. I set up a regional office in Jordan, in Amman. And coming back after I think 6 years was my last visit. It's a fantastic emotion, and you know I continue to feel really at home. You should know that a recent study. I'm from Italy originally. A recent study has shown that Italians have half genes coming from the Arabic world. I guess because you guys visited us a long time, many times during the years. So. I do really feel at home with friends like Khaled and others. And I brought a short presentation to talk about the challenges that we're facing as people and using the environmental lens to look at those challenges. Shall I start the presentation, Khaled? like to thank. Can you hear me? Yeah. I would like to thank the foundation, Shema Foundation. You have treated me like a member of the royal family. It's been a extremely warm hospitality during the last 3 days. And thank you very much, Khaled, and the foundation for inviting me and have this fantastic opportunity to speak to you about the environment. So, Your Excellencies, I know that many of you present today have a very illustrious past in the government of Jordan, and they are leaders in the environment from the government, from institutions and NGOs. And thank you, everybody. I know this is also an open lecture for the public, the people of Amman, so thank you very much for joining us today. We can start with the first slide.
Yes, you can see here.
Yeah, good. So I entitled the presentation A Turning Point for the Planet, because I really believe this is where we are living today. It's a very strange time. It's a time where we have the deepest ecological crisis, perhaps definitely our civilization, but perhaps the Earth has experienced ever. But at the same time, we are living extraordinary times also in terms of opportunities. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try, at the beginning, I will probably break your heart. If you are an environmentalist, I will make you really worried about what's happening today. But I hope that towards the end of the presentation, I will also give you some hope for how we can actually address the issues that we're facing today. This is the mission of WWF, and frankly, this is the mission of all of us. I didn't put a logo on the mission because I think this is the mission and the challenge and the opportunity we're all facing. It's about living, developing a just future for all people on Earth in harmony with the environment that is the foundation for our own well-being. This is WWF in a few numbers. I thought it was useful to know we are a network of organizations. Although we have a big panda, which is a famous logo and feels like a mega organization. In fact, we are very much a network of local organizations with local leadership working in more than 100 countries around the world, united by the same mission and vision and running a lot of projects on the ground. 3 things I want to tell you about the WWF before we go into the proper lecture. The first one is that the first thing we are about people. WWF has 5 million supporters, financial supporters, but more than 30 million social media followers, and more than 100 million people join our various initiatives of mobilization, like you may have heard about Earth Hour, an initiative that gathers people around climate change. So people are our main focus, mobilizing many people around the world. And we do that through a network of many organizations scattered in all continents. And this is our strength and our really unique strengths in a way that we bring a lot of local perspectives into a global debate in a global organization that take into account perspective coming from all continents, all realities, north, south, east, and west. We have a strong credibility with business, something that sometimes we are criticized for. I'm very honest about this. But we do believe in working with business. We do believe sometimes we need to be courageous and brave and begin to work with even companies that have a deep footprint, environmental footprint. Because unless we actually engage and try to work out solutions together, I don't think we will be triggering the change that we want to see. So, of course, we enter in collaboration with business with our eyes open, with our clear agenda, but also try and be available to understand the perspective of the business in order to together design a common agenda for change and to reduce the environmental impact. So that's something that we're very proud of, but as I said, is a tricky balance to strike. So in terms of the actual the reflections I would like to share with you today, as I said before, we're living at a time where there is no doubt we're in the middle of a major ecologic planetary crisis. And this crisis, as always, triggers also opportunities. And this is what we're going to try to discuss today. The first thing that I think should give us actually hope, and that wasn't there just a decade ago, perhaps, as it is today, is that today we know what's going on. We have a clear science around most of the environmental problems we are facing. Science is crystal clear and never been clear as today. And we know exactly what are the problems, we know exactly what are the consequences, and we know, frankly, exactly also what are the solutions to most of the problems. We know, and this is a super important dimension. We know that we entered an era that the scientists are beginning to call with a special name. You know, many of you know the Jurassic as the era of the dinosaurs. Well, today is the era of humans, the Anthropocene. Is an era that the planet has never experienced. Is an era where one species can overwhelm the natural systems, from the climate to the forest, to the ocean, to the rivers. And this has happened in a blink of an eye compared to the history of life on Earth, even compared to our own civilization. In the last 60 years, no more than that, 60 years, people talking about the Industrial Revolution now is much more recent than that. From after the Second World War, from 1950, we have been seeing an exponential acceleration of the use of resources everywhere, from energy to water, to fertilizers, to fish, timber. Everything you can think of has been exponentially accelerating because that's gone hand in hand with, of course, the demographic growth in the planet. We took 99% of the time of our civilization to reach the first billion people in 1850. And since then, we added the second billion when we were around 1930. And since then, we added 1 billion every decade. 1 billion people every decade. We're 7 today, we'll be around 9 in 2030. And of course, all this impact on the natural system of the planet has created a number of consequences, which were actually forecasted but ignored. The first one is the warming of the climate. I was talking to some of you here in Jordan, and you all experienced a very, very, very hot summer. In my own country, in Italy, my own region, in Tuscany, the oak trees were having yellow leaves in August because of the lack of water. My olives in my oak garden are actually struggling to produce olives because they're not adapted like yours to the drought. And you can see here, the global warming has grown and accelerated in the last 20 years. And we know why. We are just simply putting into atmosphere too much greenhouse gases. Simple as that. Greenhouse gases trap the heat, warm up the planet, and warm up the atmosphere. The planet is getting warmer. The poles are beginning to melt. This is an extraordinary thing. This is a piece of Antarctic as big as Belgium that has taken off the northern part of the Antarctic continent through this crack that is now complete and has created the biggest iceberg ever produced in history. And of course, you've been hearing from the news, the floods. I don't know, in this part of the world, in Europe, everybody was talking about Houston and Miami. Frankly, the real big floods happening actually in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Southeast Asia, where thousands of people died just a couple of months ago. And of course, something closer to your heart, desertification. This is a serious issue with the scarcity of water, with scarcity of precipitation, with erratic weather, and with higher temperature. This is a very serious issue in many regions of the world, not just in this part of the world, but in other continents also are facing. We cannot call these anymore natural disasters. I continue to read, the natural disaster. These are not natural disasters. These are disasters induced by us, not because hurricane didn't exist before. Of course it existed before. Floods always existed. But the severity and the frequency is what is not natural at all. And you can see here, this is the anomalies in weather in 1950. This is the anomaly in weather in 2000. And this is anomalies in weather in 2015, 16, around the world. All these little names you cannot read are the countries in the world. Now, anomalies, erratic weather, extreme weather, it's happening everywhere. Nobody is safe. And finally, just to continue to break your heart even more, sorry about that, nature is telling us something very, very clear as well. It's not just the climate, but actually the natural systems are beginning to subdue to the pressure of our development forces. Extinctions is 1,000 times faster than at the normal natural rates. 1,000 times faster. That means that we are losing species we don't even know they exist. We haven't even discovered yet, and that is disappearing from our ecosystems. We have, in WWF, launched this Living Planet Index. We are counting the wildlife populations in 3,000 sites around the world. 58% decline in 40 years. In half of my life, we have lost half of the wildlife on the planet. And today, the weight, the body mass of all the humans, all the cattle, all the goats, all the chicken, all the cats, all the domesticated animals, put together are 5 to 10 times more than everything else, any other wildlife. And more close to us, and are beginning to introduce the concept of impact on our own life. Closer to us, it's not just the wildlife far away, like pandas and tigers, orangutan being threatened. It's actually wildlife that we depend on directly. It's the fish in the ocean. 90% of the fisheries in the ocean are either overfished or fully fished. Only 10% are still at sustainable level. And we've seen in our own menus in the restaurant the number of species of fish collapsing. Now we are going to the restaurant, and most of the time we see 4 or 5 fish, all most likely farmed, not even anymore wild caught. We are losing our natural capital. This concept is an interesting one. It's not just about nature because it's beautiful, because we like it or we love it. It's actually nature because it's a capital that is absolutely essential for our life, our economy, our well-being, and let me add, our social stability as well. The good news is that we know, but knowing sometimes, only knowing is not enough. We're beginning actually to feel it. We're beginning to see it in the color of the sky. The big reaction of the countries like China to environmental degradation is because they're suffering directly from pollution to a point where they have to do something, or else their own society is going to be in jeopardy. We're seeing it in the ocean. We have the heat waves in the atmosphere that sometimes bring high temperatures to us. Now they're beginning to be created heat waves under the sea, 40, 45 degrees of water, hot water, sweeping through the corals and killing them, from this beautiful, colorful, rich environment to dead, bleached, ghostly underwater ecosystem. We see it through the plastic, the ocean plastic, the desert plastic. Plastic is something that is beginning to choke our systems, but also beginning to pose a medical threat and health issue for us. There's been interesting analysis of the tap water in many countries in the world, and they're beginning to have microplastic, plastic you don't see. It's the plastic that breaks down, becomes so small that goes everywhere. Goes in the water, goes in the fish, goes even in the salt. The salt that we're using on our food is beginning to contain microplastic. And then, of course, climate change is now being felt in our pocket as well. Not just in our heart, on our skin, is actually costing us a lot of money. The damage to Houston alone is around, to the insurance, is around $150 billion. This is real. This is not just something that we can avoid. But of course, I promise that after all the bad news, there should be something a little bit more encouraging. There is hope for a number of reasons. The first of all is exactly because we are beginning to understand. We are beginning to understand that this is something we cannot ignore and avoid anymore. If we want a prosperous future, we need to maintain a healthy environment. There is not going to be prosperity for us, for our children, if we don't protect the environment. And I would say a cultural revolution happened a year and a half ago. This is something that, of course, is more related, is more constrained, restricted to the political circles. But actually, the governments of the world have agreed that we should develop ourselves on the basis of 17 goals that should inspire our development. And those goals are, of course, poverty reduction, of course, health, of course, education, of course, social development, of course, economic development. But surprise, surprise, this time, for the first time, we have a goal on protecting the forest, a goal on protecting the ocean, a goal on protecting freshwater systems, rivers and lakes, and a goal on climate. And the whole point here is that there is not going to be really long-term social and economic development unless we protect the foundation that has been nurturing our civilization, our species, since we were born. We call it Mother Earth, not for no reason. We call it Mother Earth because we've been developing our civilization and we've been growing as biological things in nature, supported by nature. And nature continues today to provide to us every day, every second, for free, everything we need to survive. Clean air, clean water, pollination for our crops, soil for our crops, and so many other services that we benefit directly. And so the protection of the environment, the natural systems, and the climate is absolutely the condition for a proper social and economic development to happen. So if the state of the planet is going down, if the pressure is going up, it's also true that the response is actually beginning to grow. And that's where the exciting part begins. For example, take emissions. In generating energy, we, for 3 years, finally peaked the emission, the volume of CO2 emitted in the atmosphere. This is something extraordinary. From the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when we started using coal and oil to power our energy, now those emissions, for the first time in the history of humankind, has peaked for 3 years in a row. And actually, scientists think it will continue to peak for another couple of years and begin to decline. Why? Because we discovered that actually there is a way to make the same amount of energy using clean technologies. Wind, solar. What you see here is not a glass, it's a solar panel. This will be the windows of the future. This glass is able to capture solar energy, transmit it into a grid connected to the building in which is installed, and support the energy consumption in that building. This is the innovation that we've never seen before and is growing dramatically. And that innovation is taking away energy from the conventional sources like oil, gas, and coal and beginning to be generated in a clean, non-impactful way. To simplify the whole story, we have today 2 big challenges and 2 big opportunities. The first one is climate, the climate change and the need to stabilize and avoid the climate would become really crazy. Because if climate becomes really crazy, more than it is today, ladies and gentlemen, we are really going to be in trouble. And we're not going to be able to really develop sustainably without a climate that sustains our economy and society and lives. But the other one, which is less discussed about, is the loss of nature, is the loss of rivers, is the loss of water, is the loss of forest, is the loss of biodiversity, the animals, the plants that actually make the natural system work. Because when you see a forest and you see the green, that green is not just a color. That green is a network of thousands and thousands of little and big species that work together, interact with each other, and make the forest a productive forest that generates the oxygen, they retain the water, they protect the soil, and all the rest. But on climate, we are making a lot of progress. The G7 in Sicily, just earlier this year, have 3 top topics: migration, trade, and climate change. Fantastic. We got climate change at the top of the political agenda. But then when it comes to nature, This article from The Guardian says the whole story. A frog goes extinct somewhere else, who cares? And of course, frankly, a frog that goes extinct somewhere else is not the end of the world. But if one after the other, the species that disappear from our natural systems are beginning to go extinct, it's like taking off bricks from a wall, the wall of the ecological system. And once the bricks are off, the wall will collapse. And when the wall will collapse, it will be more dangerous, far more dangerous than even climate change. The bottom line is we're continuing to develop, destroying nature. We didn't understand that. We've been in nature since we started 2 million years ago as a species. We were in nature. We were competing with nature. We were dominated by nature. We had to win against nature to preserve ourselves. This is in our genes, and that's a problem, because we continue to have that approach to our relationship with the planet. And actually, we should really change. We should understand now that it's exactly the opposite. We are now so dependent on nature that if we continue to destroy it, we will destroy ourselves. And that's what we need to change. We need to learn how to develop, because we must develop socially, economically, individually, but develop in harmony with nature, fostering nature. And right now, the generation that is living today on the planet is all about scale and urgency. We know the solution. We are beginning to implement the solutions, but frankly, the speed is going to define success or failure. If we are too slow, we're not going to make it. If we are too fast, great. But the question is really how we can get to accelerate the policies and the implementation of our policies in a way that are respectable of nature. We were talking earlier on with some friends about the various nexus that exist, water, energy, and food. We are concentrating in WWF on a number of areas, but really, right now, the focus has to be on producing energy in a clean way to combat climate change, growing food, using the energy clean, using less water, less land, less everything, frankly. We need to learn how to produce more food with less, and we can if we're really smart about it. And then the last part that nobody talked much about, or at least is not spoken about in the public, is actually who is fueling development. Development doesn't happen on its own. Development is triggered by financial investment. And so how can we make sure that the financial flows that go into energy production, into infrastructure development, into agricultural development, and so on, are actually supporting good, clean initiatives, not the old, bad, and dirty initiatives. And we know what are the commodities that we need to change. We know that in terms of impact on water, impact on climate change, and impact on the ocean, we need to fish and produce food and different commodities in different ways. We know exactly what to do, frankly. We've got to bring together governments and business and consumers and agree to produce better and to consume more wisely. These are our 6 goals where WWF is working on, and they're all connected to each other. Wildlife, ocean, forest, fresh water, climate, and food. They all support each other. They're all interconnected, interdependent. But as I said just a minute ago, we are really beginning to work more and more on the drivers of the environmental degradation, the market forces, the financial investment flows, and even the governance, how we govern our land and our resources. And that's in a nutshell, the strategy that we are pursuing. The role of people in all this is critical, not because all this is frankly going to support the people. Sometimes I myself, say, we are here to save the planet. It's very arrogant. The planet is going to be fine, I can tell you. It will take 10,000 years for the climate to stabilize again. It will take 5,000 years for the forest to come back. Yes, maybe we'll lose some tigers, we'll lose the polar bear, but there will be other animals coming out. This has been the history of the planet for many, many, many millions of years. The planet is going to be fine. It's us that I'm not sure how we're going to deal in the future planet, particularly in the period where the planet will be completely destabilized. So the role of people here is important for two reasons. Because all we do, yes, for the nature we love, and frankly, when I was a boy, 12 years old, I was already passionate about wildlife and a member of WWF. But frankly, growing up and understanding the real picture, why we're doing all this is sure for nature and the wildlife we love, but frankly, is for our children. And not grandchildren. Is the children, I'm afraid, they are in the room today. And so the role of people in our strategy is critical. People are the problem, have been the problem until now, we have been the problem, but actually are also now the solution. And so the challenge of living in harmony with nature has never been more important, I feel. I go, to work for WWF in the morning, like I guess Khaled in his clean energy company, or you in your foundation, feeling really that this is an exciting time. It's a time where we need to be worried and scared because we're facing a big challenge, but also we need to be super excited because nobody else in the history of our civilization has faced this opportunity, the opportunity to change the relationship with the planet. How historical that is, how exciting that is. And finally, just to close, this is all about a number of different dimensions. It's about love and care for nature because we do love and care for nature. Many of us do. All the WWF people, the BirdLife International people, the RSCM people, the people that connect to the environmental movement and beyond. Who is happy to hear that a species goes extinct? Nobody. Nobody really enjoys seeing a forest going up in smoke. And nobody really enjoys to see an ocean full of plastic. But that's not enough. We need to actually combine the appreciation for the beauty of nature, the inspiration of nature, with the understanding that nature is a value to us. Not just sentimentally, but materially. And so when there is a forest going up in smoke, when there is an ocean full of plastic or empty of fish, we shouldn't just feel sad about it, which is what we normally do. We should be concerned. We should be feeling worried and angry because that forest in flame, that fish empty of ocean is going to ultimately undermine our own well-being. And so this is, again, the nutshell thing. Nature and our society and our economy, they're all connected. And we need to make them work in a connected way, where each of these domains support each other, not undermine each other. We are thinking in WWF that, frankly, we are protecting people through nature. Because protecting the pandas in the mountains of China protects the forest that generates a lot of water for the downstream agriculture. Because protecting the oceans, we protect the food and the fish that about 500 million people directly depend for their subsistence, and of course all of us enjoy in terms of healthy diets. So protecting nature is actually protecting people. There is no difference anymore. And that's the new big revolution, if you like, of environmentalism in the last few years. And that makes us so very excited. Because ultimately, what we are talking about today is about preserving life, all life on Earth. Not just the big famous animal, but all the little and small animals that are so important to actually maintain the ecosystems functioning for life on Earth, including, of course, ourselves. And with this message, the message of an integrated approach to nature conservation, which is about nature as much as people, I would like to thank you very much for an opportunity to speak, and I'm looking forward to questions and comments. Thank you very much. Shukran.